I used to have a lot of bad habits, nail biting, slouching, constantly avoiding my responsibilities. I even had this terrible impulse to speak over people, not caring how rude it made me seem. But I was always convinced these were just quirks, nothing serious. One night, I stayed late at the office, trying to catch up on work I'd been putting off for weeks. The place was eerily quiet, the hum of the fluorescent lights the only sound. I noticed my reflection in the glass window, hunched over, biting my nails down to the quick. I looked terrible, like a shadow of myself. My mother always warned me that bad habits could slowly ruin you. I never took her seriously, but that night, something felt off. Suddenly, I heard a sharp knock at the door. Startled, I turned around, but no one was there. Just the emptiness of the dark office space. I shook it off, probably just my nerves from all the caffeine. But then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. A text message appeared from an unknown number. "Fix yourself, before you can't." I laughed it off, thinking it was a prank, but something deep inside me twisted. I replied with a simple, "Who is this?" but got no response. I felt uneasy, but I brushed it off and continued working. But as the hours passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me. The next day, I noticed something odd. My nails wouldn't stop bleeding. No matter how much I tried to stop, they would just keep bleeding. And then there was my back. Every time I slouched, I felt this excruciating pain, like someone was driving a nail into my spine. I was terrified. I tried to stand up straight, but it was like my muscles were being pulled by invisible strings, forcing me to stay hunched. It didn't stop there. Whenever I avoided a task, something would go wrong. Papers would go missing, my computer would crash, or I'd forget something crucial. And when I interrupted someone, I'd hear that knock again, as if warning me. I knew it wasn't a coincidence anymore. The worst part came when I impulsively decided to take a shortcut through a dark alley on my way home. I didn't think it through, just wanted to get home faster. As soon as I stepped in, the air grew cold. I felt eyes on me, shadows creeping closer. I tried to turn back, but my feet wouldn't move. A figure stepped out from the darkness, its face a twisted reflection of mine, nails bitten to the bone, back hunched grotesquely, eyes filled with anger. "You didn't listen," it hissed, stepping closer. "You ignored all the warnings." In that moment, I realized this wasn't just a ghost or a figment of my imagination. It was me. Every bad habit, every avoided responsibility, every impulsive decision, coming back to claim what I'd lost. My self-control, my discipline, my life. I tried to scream, but the words stuck in my throat. The figure reached out, and everything went black. When I woke up, I was in my bed, drenched in sweat. It felt like a nightmare, but the pain in my back and the blood on my fingers were all too real. I knew then I couldn't keep living like this. If I didn't change, I wouldn't survive. That wasn't just a ghost that night, it was a warning. One I'd be a fool to ignore.
I never thought much about the little things I did. My room was cluttered with items I could never part with, a collection of things that seemed so important. But each time I bought something new, my bank account shrank. Saving money was for the future me, not the present. The nervous energy in my hands never stopped. I fidgeted constantly, never still, never at peace. Even while driving, my phone was an extension of myself, texting, scrolling through social media, sharing every moment of my day. It felt normal until it didn't. One night, I was driving home, phone in hand, when a notification popped up, another comment on my latest post. I glanced down to check it, just for a second, But in that second, my car swerved off the road, crashing into a tree. I woke up, but something was wrong. I was in my room, yet it wasn't the same. The walls were closing in, buried under all the junk I had hoarded over the years. My phone buzzed endlessly, notifications flooding in, but I couldn't reach it. My hands trembled, unable to stop the fidgeting. I tried to move, but I was stuck, trapped by the very things I had surrounded myself with. My phone kept buzzing, the noise growing louder, drowning out my thoughts. I realized then that my habits had become my prison, no escape, no way out. I wish I had saved, I wish I had focused on the road. I wish I hadn't let my phone control my life, but it was too late. Now I'm trapped, forever scrolling, forever restless, forever lost in the chaos I created.
I was always the life of the party, living for indulgence and excitement. Fast food was my go-to, and I'd splurge on the latest gadgets without a second thought. My health issues. I brushed them off as minor annoyances. Judging others was a hobby, a way to make myself feel superior. One evening, after another day of binge-eating greasy burgers and maxing out my credit card, I decided to treat myself to a new luxury watch. As I walked into the store, the fluorescent lights flickered ominously. It felt like something was off, but I shrugged it off. I was too wrapped up in my excitement. I picked out an extravagant watch, the kind you only see in glossy magazines. As I was paying, a strange, thin voice whispered, "Are you sure you need that?" I glanced around, but the store was empty except for the cashier, who didn't seem to notice anything unusual. I laughed it off, telling myself I deserved it. As I left, I noticed a dark figure standing by my car, but when I blinked, it vanished. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. Later that night, I indulged in a greasy feast, chugging beer left and right, feeling the familiar pangs of guilt mixed with pleasure. I slouched on the couch, my stomach bloated, and my eyes heavy with fatigue. The TV flickered, and I saw a ghostly figure in the reflection of the screen. It was me, but not quite right, pale, gaunt, with dark circles under its eyes. The figure's eyes locked onto mine, and it spoke in a voice that sent chills down my spine. "You keep ignoring your health, overspending, and judging others. It's all coming back to haunt you." I tried to dismiss it as a bad dream, but the next morning I woke up with severe chest pain. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just stress. But as the days passed, the pain grew worse, and I couldn't deny it anymore. My reflection in the mirror grew increasingly pale, my eyes hollow. One day, I found myself at a hospital, where the doctor's face was stern. "You've been neglecting your health for too long. Your heart's in trouble, and if you don't change your ways, it could be fatal." The doctor's words echoed the ghostly warning from my nightmare. The reality of my situation hit me hard. I had been so focused on instant gratification and judging others that I had neglected the most important thing, my own well-being. As I lay in the hospital bed, I realized the ghostly figure was a warning. The unhealthy eating, overspending, and judgmental attitude had led me to this point. If I didn't make drastic changes, I'd end up paying a far greater price than any material possession could ever be worth. The ghostly vision had been right. My choices had consequences, and it was time to face them. I vowed to turn my life around, to prioritize my health, manage my spending, and treat others with compassion. The haunting was over, but the lesson was clear. Change was the only way to save myself from an even darker fate.
Every day, I looked in the mirror and saw someone I despised. The whispers in my head were relentless. "You're not good enough. You'll never succeed." Those words echoed endlessly, drowning out any glimmer of hope. I blamed everyone for my failures, my parents for their high expectations, my friends for their lack of support, and even my colleagues for their success. But deep down, I knew I was the real problem. My relationships crumbled one by one. Calls went unanswered, messages left unread. I couldn't remember the last time I had a genuine conversation with anyone. But I told myself they were the ones who abandoned me. I held on to that grudge like it was the only thing keeping me alive. One evening, I heard a voice, a soft, eerie whisper. It came from the mirror. "You could be free," it said. I stared at my reflection, and for a moment, it wasn't me looking back. It was someone else. Someone twisted and bitter, with eyes full of hatred. "Blame them," the voice hissed. "They deserve your anger." I couldn't look away as the reflection began to change. The face warped, growing darker, more monstrous. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. My reflection sneered, feeding on my bitterness. Every insult I'd hurled at myself, every grudge I'd held, it all fueled this creature. Then, I realized, the mirror was showing me what I'd become. I had let myself hate, blame, and grudges twist me into something unrecognizable, something terrifying. I tried to turn away, but I was frozen. The reflection reached out, its hand pressing against the glass. "Let go," it whispered, almost pleading now. "Forgive, or stay trapped with me forever." With every ounce of strength, I forced myself to speak. "I forgive." The words were like poison on my tongue, but I pushed through. "I forgive them, and I forgive myself." The reflection shattered. The pieces fell to the floor, and I collapsed, gasping for air. The weight of the grudges, the blame, the self-loathing, it all began to lift. When I looked up, the mirror was whole again. My reflection was just me, tired, worn, but human. I knew I had a long way to go, but for the first time in years, I felt hope. I still avoid mirrors sometimes, but when I do look, I remind myself, the person looking back is worth saving.